the story of Moshe Rabbeinu was really the struggle he undoubtedly had in defining who he was. That he rejected by the Egyptians who tried to kill him because he had to run away, rejected by the Israelites who were tattletaling on him. He goes to Midian and says, "Oh, I have a child, Ger Haiti be'eretz nochuya. I'm in a foreign place." And we were discussing the fact that he really was struggling exactly who he was. And the reason, therefore, that when God, who we read in the Torah, had begun to respond to the struggle of the Israelites in Mitzrayim, he said there were two reasons. He saw the pain and the difficulty and the fact that they've been victimized and they're suffering, and because he made a brit with, of course, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And as we pointed out, when it comes to speak to Moshe at Har HaElokim, as it's called there, and I told you it's not just because it became Har Sinai, but indeed it had undoubtedly been a certain spiritual spot, not only for Israelites, but to others. It was known as a holy mountain, which is why God did purposely appear in the snare and the burning bush there. He speaks to Moshe Rabbeinu and he tells him, I got a mission for you. And he doesn't mention the reason why he wants Moshe to take the Israelites out of Egypt, more than saying that I see the pressure they're going under. I see the pain they're going through. In other words, he was playing Moshe on the basis of Moshe's own natural feeling of helping those who are being victimized, whether it was the Israelite who was being almost killed, or the two Israelites who were fighting, and he went to the Rasha, as it was called, and said, "Lama takereyecha, why are you beating the other?" Or he goes to Midian and he saves the Midianite shepherdesses, the daughters of Yitro. That was him. He was a very sensitive and caring person. That Moshe, that God realizes he could sell that bill of goods to Moshe. You got to help them because they're suffering also when you're somebody. But he doesn't mention Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And the whole point I was trying to make to you, and it wasn't me, as I told you, but rather, Rabbi Grossman was talking about this, but the fact that he doesn't realize how connected am I to this Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. It wasn't a good argument to use to say, hey, you know what? You're a Jew. You better help the other Jews. That's not going to be strong enough reason for him to go to Mitzrayim. And I went through a number of things that sort of pointed to that. And if you recall, toward the end of the class last week, I did point out that there are two things that changes. We don't find anywhere that God says about Brit, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov in his conversation with Moshe until the next parsha of Va'era, or it says Va'eskor et Briti. It says it goes through there. Va'era Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Okel Shakai, Ushri Hashem lo nodati lahem, v'gam hakimoti et Briti itam latet lahem et Eretz Canaan. At Eretz B'gohem Asher Garuva, v'gam ani shamati et na'akat b'nei Yisrael, Asher Mitzrayim ma'avidim otam, va'eskor et briti. So for the first time that he mentions to Moshe Rabbeinu that he sees the suffering of the Israelites, and I revealed myself to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and I remember my brit to them. Yeah. to thank you very much. I have it in my phone notes it very well. Don't worry. The brit that I gave Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. But before that, we don't read any connection to that to Moshe Rabbeinu. When he comes, he said, "I'm the God of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov," but doesn't go beyond that. I was told very nicely. It was at least a minute or two after the class began. I was told, or I suppose it was sent to me, but I have no proof of that. This is, and we're very happy, and I have to thank her for that. That Malka Finkel has dedicated this class, sponsored the class, celebrating the occasion of her birthday on Adar Sheni, Rosh Chodesh Adar Bet. But there's no Adar Bet, so that she's actually much younger than you think she is, because every leap year she misses a right? It's like someone who's born on February 29th, right? Yeah, really, also. Very good. So anyway, thank you very much, Malka. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate your support that you've always had for me. Thank you. Many, many more health. I'm also told, by the way, that now the classes are on YouTube. It's a YouTube viewer. So if you enjoy my face so much and want to see it again, you see it on YouTube. And make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. But make sure the nice comments about me. Yeah. By the way, this is a gentle reminder. What would be a tough reminder? You better do this? I don't know. Anyway, it's a gentle reminder to let you know that now we have become very, very famous and public with YouTube. Whatever. Anyway, back to what I was saying. And I was pointing out what happens, or what happened to Moshe, who was grappling with his identity, who named his son Oivei, Ger Haiti, I've been a stranger in a strange land, that now he goes on. And I, of course, started by, that's the whole focus of this whole year for the last couple of weeks, was trying to figure out what was happening with the Brit Milah, with Sipporah, and what was happening there and everything. And I pointed out at the end, there are two things that made Moshe now say, yeah, I guess I'm a Jew. It wasn't his nose, just a matter of what happened. There are two Vayifkeshehus. We have two things, two psukim, one from the other, where it says Vayifkeshehu, and he met him. The second one, as I pointed out last time, was when he goes on the mission that God had told him to. The first thing to do was go and say hello to your brother, to meet Aharon. And it says exactly that, Vayifkeshehu, right? He went and he met, Nifgosh Mistamed, Vayifkeshehu, and he met Aharon.
Is it here written? Is it written here?
I'm trying to remember if that is. I believe I have it. Yes. Where's my source? Source is the
Wait,
source.
is it on
Of
this
course.
page? Here it is. It's number 3, Rashba.
No, that's just the Rashbam, but okay. That's not what I want. Rashbam's a nice guy. He's grandson of Rashi, after all. I believe I have that on the back of the page, and I believe we have it there. No, I said last. Okay, yeah. It's not on this. It was there last week. It jumped out. No, no. I'm sorry, it's not included here in the source sheet, but it is maybe in the beginning when I had the whole story, the long one. No, that Vayifkeshehu. Oh yeah, you are right. That Rashbam brings down the quotation Vayifkeshehu Hashem. That's from that, but that's his. That God, that actually had to do with the Brit itself of his son. But anyway, he meets Aaron, The meaning of him to the family had a very deep impact. You think about this. We were discussing, did he ever go visit? According to Chazal, it was 40 years he was in Midian, which is not an outrageous thing to say. After all, we do know that he was already 80 years old when he presented himself to Paro. And it's difficult to say that he was 75 when he was killing the people in Mitzrayim, because it says Vayigdal Hayeled, so he's a young man. At any rate, Moshe. Anyway, the idea of being once again attached to his family was his mother, who taught him, alive still. Doesn't say, we don't know. It was Amram, who we see absolutely no connection with Moshe at all throughout the Tanakh. Was he still alive? We don't know. I would imagine the man was 80 years old. I don't know. But the ages in those days, who knows what. So that was one thing. But the first thing was the first Vayifkeshehu. That's not where he met up with his brother. But there it says Vayifkeshehu Hashem. That's where God met up with him. When did God suddenly go meet up with him? Nope, after that. That's what we've been talking about the whole time. Moshe leaves, says goodbye to Yisrael, goes on the mission that God told him to go. He goes Vayihi Baderach Mamalon, on his way to Egypt, at the resting place, Howard Johnson's, whatever it was. We say Malone as a motel. It wasn't a motel. So they're little places where they stay over. Vayifkesheu Hashem. God meets him, and what are the next words that say? Vayavakesh lahamito. Wants to kill him. That's so these two meetings changes. What changes with the Brit Milah? That's what made him realize he's a Jew. That he's now it's his Midianite wife who taught him that. He gave a Brit Milah, but the bracha I make for a Brit Milah, Lachniso lebrito shel Abraham Avinu. He's part of the Abrahamic tribe. He's a Jew. Those two things impact him very strongly. And you note, not yet, but you will be noting when you, again, read the text over again, that this whole story with his son and his wife there, very nice. But after that happens, after that Brit Milah that saves his life, he goes on to Egypt, and we never again read about Moshe having his wife there, or his children there, or anything. Not there. Chazal say she went back to Midian, which makes sense because at the beginning of the Parsha of Yisro, after the division, the splitting of the sea, it says, and Yisro came and brought his daughter Tzipporah, Moshe's wife, and the two sons. So obviously they had gone back. So that's what happened. Why? And easy. The kid just had surgery. Maybe she had to give him time to rest and go back. But I think even more basically is an understanding, and that there's a number of midrashim who say that, and meforshim who think God was angry. Moshe, I'm telling you to save the Jews. You're going there. You're going to visit the family. You're going to have a wonderful time. We'll take a vacation. Maybe we'll see the Sphinx. What are you doing? Moshe didn't understand, perhaps, the depth of what he's doing. And that's why Chazal say in the Midrash that it was Aaron who said, Ishtagata, what are you nuts? You brought your kids here now? We're trying to get the Israelites out, and you're bringing more Jews in here. That was their way of expressing that God was angry too. He didn't think. And that's why maybe another reason why Hashem, God wanted to kill him. And the fact that he now takes a non-gemalt, is that a nice, beautiful Hebrew word? A non-circumcised son of his, and he brings him along. And God sees this. So what do you think? He doesn't know who he is. And I told you, all of the Levites, Levium, and it says that clearly, had the bris milah in Egypt. Everybody had the bris milah in Egypt. You see that in the fifth parak of Yoshua, where it says that Yoshua had to give the kilo malu. It says because all those who were born, it actually says all those in Egypt had gotten brit milah, but those who were born in the desert did not get. So they did have brit milah. Where was Moshe when he had his sons? Why didn't he have a brit milah? Answer: he wasn't in Egypt. That was one of the most powerful, I think, arguments that he didn't know who he was. If every Jew living in Israelites had a brit milah, including him, right? But he had a son in Midian, he didn't give him a brit milah. Did he do the first one? This is the second one. We don't know. But the fact that he didn't, I think, expresses something here that I'm trying to drive home. He was struggling. And when he realized that he indeed was part of the Abrahamic tribe, and he was part of Israel and part of his family, and he's one of them, now he rose to God. Yes?
Well, doesn't the Midrash say that he himself didn't have a bris?
Don't know. I don't think the Midrash knows either. It's difficult to imagine he didn't have a bris milah. If we're told that everybody in Mitzrayim, it says, again, the Midrash doesn't agree with the text. The text says that all of them got bris milah. He was born in Egypt. He was born with the bris. Again, I like very much holding on. I understand what Chazal say. I think it's very important, as I said from the very beginning, to see Moshe. And that's what the Torah is very much that way, and the Judaism is very much that way. The concept of, he was a son of God, and he was in. This is not a Jewish thing. He was a human being. That was his greatness. Not that God made him great. God didn't make him great. He became great because of his personality, because of because of the decisions he made. That's what made Moshe Rabbeinu. It wasn't that he suddenly had a special thing. And this idea, he was gemalt. He was heaven. The idea that from the time he was born, he had God is very nice, but it's very Christological. That's exactly what the Christians have said about their man. That he went, there was a scar in the sky. We see people who are, yes, sometimes they were born of women who were akarot, which is not miraculous for them to give birth, but it is something special. But the idea that he was immediately born as a special person, I don't believe is part of what the text tries to tell us. And it's trying to tell us everybody can be as best as they can be. We all have possibilities. And it isn't that God made you the best. It's that you became the best. You've done the best you could do for yourself, and you've gone to a certain place. At any rate, so here is Midian, Moshe the Midianite with his Midianite wife, who was going, and his Midianite son, and his newly born Midianite baby, and he was going on this wonderful trip as an Israelite. So anyway, as I said, this is what really was the scale really is what changed his life in a very real sense. Okay, now I told you last time I had a very big problem here. I forgot the pagination. So I wanted to, before I came here, I went to my computer. I said, get the pages on here. So this is what's happening.
This is easy, we have two sides.
That's for your source sheet, and that's true. But I'm telling you, in my notes that I have here, there is a page here that it seems to me is. Oh, hello, there it is. All right, now. All right, Moshe goes on his way to Egypt. He goes on the mission. Is he excited to go on the mission when he finally agrees he's going to go? No, this is before he met his brother. Twould seem not. Not only, as I told you, he seemed to be taking along a family, as if this is a family going on a nice time, but other reasons also. Um, when you look at the text, I think you have this. I think I have this as one of the sources. I didn't include that. Yes, the last source, number 6 on the page. That's why I give these both the Hebrew source and the English translation as best as it was translated, or as best as I was able to fix the translation that he had. So you have there, okay, God gave him a mission to do, and he argues with Kadosh Baruch Hu. We have a fight, and he disagrees, but he's reluctant to do it. And I pointed that out once too. Look at the text when he argues with God and says, God, after a number of arguments with him, says that shlach b'asher tishlach, send whoever you have to. And God says, and you're going. We never see his response said, Halo ve'elech, I shall go. I'm on my way. He never agrees to it. When I used to be able to read, I would read that. I felt from the very beginning, well, why doesn't God say, okay? Why doesn't Moshe say, all right, I will go? No, he doesn't respond at all. Which to me, sometimes the omission in things in the story says a lot too, that he wasn't happy about it. It seems he's going to go, but he will go reluctantly. And so we read the following. We say, Vayelech Moshe vayashav el et yachotno. So Moshe goes, and he returns to Yitro. And he says, El Chana, let me go. V'ashuva el achai asher b'Mitzrayim. I think I was kidding around when I said he's going to visit the family. That's what he says to his father-in-law, Yitro. He said, let me go and return to my brethren in Egypt, and just to see if they're still alive. So at least whether he was just putting on a play here that he didn't want to tell the father-in-law, well, God talked to me and said I have to go and take the Jews out of Egypt. Maybe he doesn't think, I'm having enough problems with my father-in-law. I don't want to go tell him this is what I'm going to do. So he gives that. But the fact that he takes the kid with him, it seems that, he was making that very real. That's what he was doing. Well, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe. God said to Moshe, or better yet, I put that in because I felt it's a better translation. God had said, before this happened, God had said to Moshe in Midian, go, return into Egypt, for all the men who sought your life are dead. In other words, and I also see this also, he had this conversation with God at Har HaElokim. Does he go from there to Mitzrayim? No. He goes home, understandable. Does time go by? I feel that this verse is saying God had to sort of give him a little, hey, Moshe, I told you, you got to go and take him out of Egypt. Or was it God saying, now is the time for him to go, and he wasn't going right away? Could be. It can't be for sure, but that's how I feel about this. Hashem had said to Moshe when he was in Midian, okay, now return to Egypt. So Moshe took his wife and his sons and returned to Egypt. And he also took the rod of God in his hand. At the time, what was the rod of God? That was interesting. God, he hadn't done any miracles yet with his makel, but it eventually becomes seen by the people as God's. He split the sea with it. He did the plagues with it, so it was seen as the rod of God. and which rhymes also. And God had told Moshe, when you return to Egypt, do all the wonders that I gave you, and do them in front of Paro. But don't worry about it. I will harden his heart. I'll make him more stubborn, and he will not let the people go. So don't say, no, it's not going to happen. Okay, we're going to do it now. It's going to take time. It's going to be a process here. So you must go to Pharaoh and say, "Thus says Hashem, B'ni Bechori Israel," which means Israel is my firstborn son. Which is scary to think. What is this concept that he's called? But it's firstborn son. Again, the concept of a Bechor throughout Tanakh is not only one who was firstborn, but one who was chosen, without a pun, because the Hebrew is similar but not the same word. It's Bachir. He was chosen from the Livchor with a chet, not with a chaf. But B'ni Bechor, he's my chosen son. He's my favorite. Yeah.
Actually, I think it says, so you must say to Pharaoh in the Hebrew, but you left out
Yes,
the word-
yes,
you left
yes.
out the word.
Yeah, Amarta al Paro, right? And you should say you must. Yeah, you must to Pharaoh. Obviously, I left out say. I'd say. Well, what can I do? There goes my perfection. What? That's what it is. I didn't make the mistake. They have little men in there who don't do what I want them to do. Right. Anyway, so and of course, God's having a play on words here. So he says, I say to you, you let my son go so he can serve me. But if you refuse to let him go, I'm going to kill your firstborn son. There's a little play on there. That's play on the words, and it's a pretty good threat. And so God has commanded now Moshe to go back to Egypt, right, on his mission. But he tells his father-in-law, I'm going with the family to see if everybody's alive and the family's okay. And my family's okay in Egypt. And he does not say anything about to see if my people are okay there. That he doesn't say. Just want to say, well, my family is okay. So this is why I'm saying there's a struggle here. He's still struggling. When he left, I would tell you reluctantly on this mission, he doesn't seem to even connect it to the fact that he has to help the Israelites. I'm going to see the family, see the mishpacha, how they're doing, right? And then God reminds him by saying, you tell Paro that B'ni Bechori Yisrael, Israel is my favorite son, my special son, my treasured son is a good way of putting it. And if you don't listen, then your firstborn, your treasured son, Paro, will be killed. Okay? So that's what he says. God tells Moshe. That should be a pretty clear message to him. If God says, B'ni Bechori Yisrael, is he not saying, Moshe, you're Yisrael, you are special. You're part of that special nation, my favorite nation. That's the way I'm taking him out. And what does he find out? He gets to the inn. The kid doesn't have bris milah. He hasn't identified his child as part of Israel. Even after God has told him what he has to go and do, one would have imagined that Moshe said, let me get a mile first. Let me just check about God. Now I know that I'm an Israelite, and I know all Israelites have a bris milah because I was brought up in Egypt with Israelites, and they all had a bris milah, so I better give it to my son, and he doesn't do so. God gets angry at that point. That's what the bris milah happens there. That's the whole story there. Basically what I've developed here is the story of Moshe, who's going back to Egypt, at least as he claims to be, even if it's just a story for his father-in-law. But it would seem something pretty well set in his ideas. He's going there as a Midianite tourist with his Midianite wife and Midianite kids. God comes to remind him that you're going to help the Israelites, to meet your Israelite brothers and receive his assistance. The brother, to meet the Israelite elders. He says he's going to meet the Zakanim, the elders, their leaders, plan with them, and save the Israelite nation. That's what his job was. And that's why he takes on the identity of an Israelite finally, at starting with the Brit Milah of his son, and realizing, whether directly, indirectly, or whether we learn that ourselves through the words in the Navi, that he needs to what we would call dam habrit, the blood laying, the blood of the circumcision, to make him, to the child that he would have it, to see to it that to save his son from being basically seen as an Egyptian. If you don't have a bris milah, so you're not a Jew. So you're not from Abraham's family. And if your son is going to be in Egypt, right, and he doesn't have a bris milah, he's an Egyptian as far as I'm concerned. That's a threat to his own son. At that moment, he said, I better give him a bris milah. At least TORAH understood that and said, I better give him a bris milah. That is what was happening here. And that is why to identify himself as one of the Israelites, B'nai Avraham, B'nai Yitzchak, B'nai Yaakov, and part of and if that's the case, he's part of the Brit Avot. He's now part of the Brit, the agreement that God made with Abraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov, that, of course, they'll have the land, but the Brit that they had, they didn't have Brit Ben HaBitarim, where he's promised the land. It was also have the Brit of having a Brit Milah that he had, the second Brit God makes, which is a family agreement of, come on, I told you, this is English thing. A Brit is, tell me what, a covenant, thank you very much. A covenant, exactly right. And when you go through that more, the Brit, the dam of the Brit, and the dam Pesach, the blood of the Korban Pesach, established the identity of Israel. Because how did God not attack any of the firstborn of Israel? He said, put the dam, the blood, on the mezuzot, meaning on the doorways of your houses. Paschal sacrifice is very close to the concept of the Brit Milah. Why do I say that? Are you allowed to have, I had this whole thing. I gave this, I remember giving this, my son had a bris on Shabbos. My youngest son had a bris on Shabbos. Why can't you do a bris on Shabbos? Why? How is it possible to do, are you allowed to slaughter an animal on Shabbos? Yeah, you can't do that on Shabbos, unless you're in the Beis Hamikdash, of course. So what you have here, and we say it at the Haggadah. You may remember that God in the Sefer in Yechezkel. God says, "And you will live it's through your blood that you will live," and it's all mentioned. Chazal all say that it's very simple. That this verse is talking about the two bloods that are going to make you an Israelite, the two bloods that will save your life. It's Dam Brit and the Dam Pesach. That's what it is. So now Moshe finally does proceed on his mission, um, not on a humanistic and moral level alone, which is something he would do naturally for what he is, the type of person he was, but actually now also on a nationalistic level. I'm doing it because I'm part of the family of Abraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov, and it's my family that is now being threatened, and God has made a covenant with my family, with my nation, and I'm part of that nation. And that's where he does belong. That's where he belongs. The man who didn't know where he belonged, who ran away from Egyptians who were pursuing him, who ran away from the Israelites who were undermining him, and who found himself just as a foreigner in Midian, now finds out who he is. And that is when he realizes who he is and where he commits to that. He goes on the mission reluctantly, but he comes out after that mission understanding that he indeed is an essential part of the nation of Israel. And that is how Moshe, struggling with his real identity, has been told or taught by God who he really is. He went through the struggle. He went through the struggle. And there's obviously, as I told you once before, the irony that it took a Midianite to teach him that. But then again, what was the most powerful, impactive source for Moshe throughout his life? What impacted him? What made him who he was? What would we say? Women and women and women. Whether it was, okay, Tzipporah at the end, whether it was Yocheved, whether it was Bat Paro, and how we mentioned that Amram is never mentioned. It just said, Vayelach Ish Beit Levi, some man. Now, Yocheved's name is not mentioned either, but she's involved there. We're told that she takes first of all, she saves his life. She places him on the reeds by the river. She goes and takes him home and educates and weans him. And she's a son. When we discussed, we discussed who really named him. Was it Yocheved or was it Bat Paro? And we went through different before Shim, and clearly, like I said, I think the whole the fact that it is not very clear was because they both of them did. He had two mothers who impacted him, who made him who he was. That's what Chazal say a lot about what they call Bitya, or we call Batya. That's what the name they gave. He was the daughter of God. That she was Bat Paro, let alone all of the danger she put herself in and what she did and so on and so forth. That was tremendously important. And then, saving Moshe's life was Tzipporah. We're giving it was a tremendous thing. And beyond Yitro, who we said also had an impact on him, this is who created Moshe, who he was, and why he became how great as he is. So that's the irony of the whole story. And when we'll have, I hate to tell you this, I'm sorry if I say it, but please don't get in it. 6 weeks till Pesach.
Don't scare us.
Oh no, what hotel am I going to? Anyway, the Torah says, Agada says, and Gemara in Pesachim says there's an argument between Rav and Shmuel. It says you have to first tell the story of Israel as matchil b'gnut. You start with the terrible, the shame of Israel, and you finish it, Sayim, with the greatness the terrific of Israel. So the fact of that is, they disagree. Is it Abadim Ahinu that we were once Nebuch, we were once slaves, or is it that Mitchila over the Avodah Zarah, or were we once idolatrous? But it impacts on two things. Abadim Hayinu is not oive. A Jew shouldn't be a slave. We just place mishpatim after all. But rather that it's a crime against humanity. The concept of uh, of of really oppressing a person as a slave is against humanity itself, and we have to fight against it. But we also understand that there's mitchila of the avodah zarah. The fact that Jews were idolaters, that was especially a terrible thing for Jews. There are those are the two things that when it comes to the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim and the story of Moshe. Moshe was a great humanist. He just had difficulty saying which human family he belonged to. He struggled with that. And those two things is what came about what we have. And that's why it's significant, by the way, when we get to Pesach as well. Look, I know I'm a little early. So I'll just quickly let you know that Emir to Hashem, next week, before I fall over, next week, we hopefully will start the story of the Yam Suf. If you're interested, if you take the text and just read the story from the beginning of Shalach, just the first, I would say, I don't know, 6-7 verses, and try to understand it and see if you have any trouble with it, because God, no, I have a lot of trouble with it. And we'll go through trying to understand what it does. I'll bring with you some very, very interesting revelations that we have now through archaeology and other things about this whole route and how they got there and so on and so forth. Either way, I let you go on a nice, wonderful Shabbos.